The CEO mistook me for a secretary for an hour, then his assistant revealed who I really was. I landed at JFK at 5 a.m. to find my phone blown up with 70 missed calls from Richard Brennan, where his voicemails went from professional to straight up begging for a meeting before his noon board meeting. I already knew his company was in trouble since their stock had dropped 73%, but his desperation was something else. The interesting part was that his warehouses were perfectly positioned for my expansion plans, so I decided to go to the meeting. When I walked into his conference room at 7 that morning, Richard was already there pacing back and forth with sweat stains under his arms. He looked up at me, and his whole demeanor changed from panic to annoyance. Without even asking my name, he immediately pointed to a chair and told me to sit down and take notes for whoever my boss was. I tried to introduce myself, but he literally held up his hand to stop me from talking and said he didn't have time for pleasantries from the secretary. Once he decided I was just a secretary, I watched him transform from a desperate CEO into the most condescending person I had ever met. At first, his disrespect was subtle as he started explaining his entire career history, as if he wasn't going bankrupt at the moment. He told me that in his 30 years of business, he had never seen such disrespect as sending someone who probably didn't even understand what a merger was to negotiate a partnership. While organizing papers on his desk, he kept glancing at me and commenting on how my generation expected to run companies without putting in the real work. I just stayed silent and simply took notes like he asked, but he interpreted that as evidence that I really was just a secretary, and his comments became bolder. He started explaining that my boss clearly didn't understand how real business worked if they thought sending someone like me would impress him. He told me directly that whoever ran my company was probably some tech kid who got lucky with timing and would be bankrupt within 2 years without his help. He actually laughed while saying that my entire company's revenue was probably less than what he spent on his car collection last month. The disrespect became more personal when he started making assumptions about me directly, saying I probably got my job because I was someone's niece or daughter, rather than having any actual skills. He told me that when he took over the company, people like me would be the first to go because he only kept employees who added real value. His confidence grew with each insult as he explained that he had destroyed dozens of companies like mine by pretending to help them before taking everything they had built. Then Richard crossed into truly malicious territory by turning his computer screen toward me and showing me confidential documents from our internal servers. He explained that our cybersecurity was so pathetic that his tech team had hacked our entire system in less than an hour as a weekend project. As he clicked through our private employee salaries, internal emails, and strategic plans, he told me exactly how he planned to use this information to poach our best clients and employees while pretending to be our partner. He said he would string us along for 6 months, learning everything about our operations before executing a hostile takeover that would leave my boss with nothing. The height of his cruelty came when he leaned back with absolute confidence and looked me directly in the eyes while delivering what he thought was his killing blow. Tell your boss I want 70% ownership, and every single person in your office under 30 gets fired on day 1 because I don't work with children. Right as those words left his mouth, his assistant burst through the door looking terrified about the board arriving early. When Richard dismissed him saying he was busy with a secretary, the assistant held up his phone and said the words that changed everything. But sir, this is your meeting with Mr. Carter, the CEO. The transformation in Richard's face from smug arrogance to complete horror was instant. Richard dropped into his chair and his whole body deflated as he started stammering about misunderstandings and how his assistant should have shown him my photo. His hands were shaking as he pushed the contract back toward me, saying he would take 30% instead of 70, then 20 when I didn't budge at his measly offer, then finally begging me to let him keep just 10% of his own company. Instead of answering, I told him that he had confessed to so many crimes, so I would personally make sure he got charged and spent the rest of his life in prison. Just then, the police walked in, and Richard had to walk out of his company in handcuffs, hanging his head low so that his employees wouldn't recognize him. But I made sure they knew when I announced later on that the board voted unanimously to remove him and have me in charge.